Are these two Pearl Jam albums underrated? Well, they shouldn't be. In this video, we're checking out No Code and Yield, two awesome Pearl Jam albums. Let's go do it. No Code and Yield, the last two records that Pearl Jam released in the 90s. It's their fourth and fifth albums. The first three they did, of course, also in the 90s. Just sublime records, massive records. I'm talking about 10 Verses and Vitalogy. Yeah, they may outweigh and outshine these particular two records in some ways, but No Code and Yield should not be underestimated. Far from it, in fact. These are two really cool records, two really good albums, great songs on them. No Code came out in 96. It was the follow-up to 1994's Vitalogy. Everybody knows how big that record was, so they had a lot to live up to. And this album's really different. Not as hardcore, not as heavy. It's kind of got a real mystery about it. A lot of different stuff going on. Starts off with that really cool intro song into the album, Sometimes. Large fingers pushing pain. You're God and you've got big hands. It's a very cool intro to the record. A perfect setup, really, for what's to come. You've got the big rock song in there, Hail, Hail. But most of the record is far more abstract. Experimental even in parts. The song Who You Are definitely has that Eastern influence on it. In My Tree with that unmistakable drum intro it has, along with Eddie Vedder's vocal. These aren't your just typical verse-chorus songs, not all of them. They go in different directions. Smile with that amazing big chorus it has where Vedder sings, I Miss You Already. Off He Goes, that classic acoustic track from the album. Most people know that one. And you got a couple of absolutely really heavy belting songs on here with Vedder screaming. That's with Habit and Lukin. So that hard edge of Pearl Jam is still there. And by the end of Lukin, which is like 60 seconds of just hard out racket, sets it up perfect for the next song, Present Tense, which is such a mellow, quiet start and builds into an absolutely amazing song. And then you've got this like real pop rock song, that's Mankind. Vedder doesn't actually sing on that, it's Stone Gossard. I remember playing that song to some friends once when I put on this album, and they were like, is that Pearl Jam? I've heard the song before, but I never knew that was them. It's a cool song. And then I'm Open, it's like 3 minutes of Vedder just talking, it's spoken word. So very much an experimental sounding track. So as I say, No Code, very different to the three albums that came before it. This is Pearl Jam at the height of their popularity. Interestingly, on the first three Pearl Jam records, it was always Eddie Vedder who had the final say on the songs and what went out. And that was the same on No Code as well. But No Code would mark the last time that Vedder would have such control over everything. The band would bring in partway completed songs, Vedder would have to finish everything, and by the end of No Code, Vedder was just so burnt out, and he just couldn't do that anymore. So what he wanted to do for the next record, Yield, was have much more of a collaborative deal going on, with the band members bringing in fully finished songs, helping out on lyrics and stuff like that. And that was Vedder's idea to do that. Guitarist Mike McCready said that he noticed a change in Vedder's attitude during the recording of Yield, saying, I used to be afraid of him and not want to confront him on things. We talk more now and hang out. He seems very, very centered now. So from Yield onwards is where you get that much more of a collaborative Pearl Jam. And speaking of Yield, we're going to look at that right now. I see a ton of similarities between Yield and No Code. They both aren't like the three albums that came before them, as I've said before. The 10, the Verses, and the Vitalogy. There's something a bit different. So No Code came out in 96, Yield in 98. And I think these two records fit together really well. I mean, don't get me wrong, they clearly have their differences, but they complement each other well. Both records were produced by Brendan O'Brien, who they had been working with for a while now, and there are just amazing songs on this album. Kicks off with Brain of J, just some really cool rock, with Vedder singing in the chorus, "The whole world will be different soon, the whole world will be relieved." Faithful, just a really uplifting song in the choruses. Very good, underrated track. A lot of these tracks are. The two big songs off this album that were released as singles, of course, Given to Fly and Wish List. Good tracks, especially Given to Fly, just in terms of how big of a song and how epic it is. Do the Evolution, another very good song from this album, and it got a really good music video too. And that was the band's first music video since their first record, 10. So they had gone through Versus, Vitalogy, and No Code with no music videos. They didn't want to do that. But for their 5th record, they finally put out a music video. Their first since 10. Track number 8 is just a short experimental song known as Red Bar. The band have done similar things on previous records. Just like a short experimental soundscape, if you will. Goes for like a minute. 3 good songs with MFC, Low Light, and In Hiding. Good tracks. Push Me, Pull Me again has that very experimental type sound. Sounds like it could have almost gone on No Code. It's a cool track. Finishes with All Those Yesterdays, which actually contains a hidden track partway through known as Hummus. Basically just a random instrumental they threw in there. So for me, 2 very good Pearl Jam albums, 2 underrated records from the band. Personally, I'd put No Code ahead of Yield. I think it's the better album, in my personal opinion. I still even have my old school cassette of it, which came with this really cool like little booklet. Pearl Jam is the master of inventing like CD sleeves and reinventing new ways to repackage a CD with little booklets and stuff they do, right? But as I say, these records were a departure from the early success that Pearl Jam had had with their massive albums they had released up to that date, as I've already gone over them. And they were a slight step back in intensity, you could say, but still very much quality material. 2 Pearl Jam albums that should not be overlooked at all. Thanks guys for tuning in. What do you think of all that? Put your thoughts in the comment section, and we will catch you next time.